What is HTML? What does the term HTML even mean? And how does it relate to the web? In a minute, we'll talk about the big picture of three technologies that drive the web: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But where does HTML fit? In other words, precisely what role does HTML play in web development? As we go along, you will see that understanding the answers to these pretty simple questions will actually help you to make correct coding decisions down the line. Well, first of all, what does HTML stands for? It stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So let's go over each one of these words and find out what exactly they mean. So first of all, hypertext. Well, hypertext is text which contains links to other text, and that is basically the entire web, right? One document points to another document which points to a bunch of other documents, and it grows on and on. Sometimes they link back to the original document and it becomes one gigantic web, and obviously it's not just about text nowadays. Hypermedia plays a huge role in a web today. You can watch videos, listen to music, and really hypermedia is just an extension of hypertext. The next term is markup. So markup means to mark something up, to annotate. So for example, it's really all about content. So if you have some content, for example, if you have a document you are writing called I love programming, that's the content, and you want to annotate the content to tell the browser or tell some other machine out there, some other program out there, what is content, what this content is, and that what HTML does. So HTML goes, surrounds and wraps the content in some markup language like text. So you can see here why I love programming is wrapped around with the title tag, which kind of tells us some software out there that this is the title of this document. Which brings me to the first big point. HTML is human readable, so these text looks like instruction for a document structure. You don't need to run it through some interpreter in order to understand the output structure of this document. It is very clear what it is. The last word in the hypertext markup language is language, and language basically implies that it has its own syntax meaning and there is a right and wrong way to code it. So for instance, in the example on the left, the closing div tag appears after the closing h1 tag. So its closing order is switched, which causes parsing and potentially rendering errors. So the HTML is language. You could actually code it up in a way such that something is wrong and something will break. HTML also has its own semantics, which means tag names can mean something either to machine or to humans. Okay, let's talk about the three technologies that drive the web. Each one has its own distinctive purpose, and all three of them fit very nicely together. Let's start with HTML. HTML provides the structure, which means what components does the HTML documents have. For example, it can have one heading, two paragraphs, and a footer. Note that does not tell you anything about how these components are visually laid out, what they look like, what color they are, what font size they are. It only tells you what are components. Like in a house, if you have 3 rooms and a kitchen, you don't really know what color the kitchen is, what color the wall of the kitchen. The only thing you know is what component makes up the house. The color style is the role of CSS. So colors, layouts, font style, font sizes, in other words, any stylistic types of things. So for example, if we have a heading in our HTML document, it will tell us what color, what font size it is. So that's the job of CSS. And the third, JavaScript. Its job is to provide behavior, provide functionality. It adds functionality to the page. So for example, what happens when HTML document finishes loading into the browser? Or what happens if I click on one of the headings? That's the job of JavaScript, to provide that behavior. Let's take a look at a quick example of these concepts in actions. Okay, so the example that we are going to take a look at is located in the example lecture 01 folder, and the file we are going to look at is called structure dash only dash before .html. And it's a simple HTML file. There is nothing but some HTML and dummy text, and it's got a title, it's got a heading here, a couple of paragraphs, and this is a footer. Where in the footer we have the tech support email address. Okay, so basically nothing more than there is just a HTML and some dummy text, and we are also going to take a look at structure only after .html. Where it's the exact same HTML document, but we inserted some styles into it and some behavior as well. So for example, the headings we made it in green, we center align it. The second paragraph has some margin applied to it. The footer has a paragraph with our tech support email. And if we click in the tech support email, it's going to pop up an alert for us. Okay, let's take a look at both of these documents in the browser. So here, the first document, there is nothing special about it. It's got the title we talked about, a couple of paragraphs, and the tech support email at the bottom in the footer. And if I click on it, nothing actually happens. But if we look at the document number 2, we see that HTML is structure only heading is now green and a much bigger title, and we see that the position of it has moved to the center. And we also see that the second paragraph is in the center and it's much bigger font compared to before. And if we click on the email address that we talk about, we see an alert gets popped up with the message email us is useless, which sounds just about right for the most people's experiences with tech support. So the thing to notice here is that the difference between the two HTML documents are up styles and the behavior applied, but the structure of both HTML document is exactly the same. So in summary, we spoke about HTML and the fact that its job is to annotate content and define document structure, and obviously as any language, it has the right syntax and wrong syntax, which you will have to learn in order to code it. And the three core web technologies, HTML, CSS and JavaScript, work very well together because each one of them has its own distinct and precise role, and they kind of don't really step on each other. They work very nicely together.